Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing this morning? Fantastic. Yesterday, I was sitting here like, how am I going to start the day after going a World War II history presentation? And I was like, well, you can't compete with that. So I said in my little pea brain, we're not starting the day, we're continuing it. Therefore, I don't have to compete. Anyways, Will, you set up this session perfectly yesterday when you ended with kind of the theme of what we've talked about thus far and how all of the work we're doing is really about connecting with audiences. And this session really does that. And you'll hear from three great presenters to do such a thing. But before we get into that, I have a little diversion, which I promise is connected. How many of you, in talking to your friends, try and describe what you do as your job, you start talking to them and you get this glazed over look from them? And the non-work friends who don't really know what you do, and you're just talking, describing, raise your hand. How many? Yeah, we've all had that. So, fun little side story. I was talking to my friends, non-science at all, business, counting, all of that. They're like, what are you doing this week? I was like, well, hey, I'm going to this Marco marine debris. Cool, great people. I started talking about abandoned derelict vessels, microplastics, derelict fishing gear, and I saw the eyes glaze over. They're like, oh, Brittany's doing her thing again, just ignore her. So I was like, okay, I need to change tactics here. I'm going to a conference to talk trash. And their response was, Brittany, you should be good at that, so you'll fit right in. And yeah, okay, I set myself up for that one. But the point of this story is I knew I was losing people, and so I met them where they're at. And that is what this session is about. It's about working with people to figure out how to do marine debris removals with a specific culture in mind, how to tackle small island community microplastics, and how to come up with a nationwide data set while working with people at the local level. So all of these tie in together of meeting people where they are at to have lasting impacts, and whether that's ecological, economic, or social benefits. So today you're going to hear from Beth Roach, Tribal Council Vice Chair of the Nottoway Indian Tribe of Virginia and the National Water Conservation Manager of the Sierra Club. And she's going to be talking about Nottoway River Resilience, Clean River Day to Nottoway River Guides. Then you're going to hear from Chloe McKenna, University of Edinburgh, with the Citizens of a Changing Coast, a socio-ecological analysis of marine plastic pollution in Scottish Island communities. And last, you're going to hear from Tait from the Virginia Institute of Marine Science on the nationwide TRAP program, Insights from a Diverse Array of Marine Debris Removal Efforts. And, wrong way. With that, I will turn it over to Beth.
Nawe. Skanaha Kiase Beth Roach. It is so wonderful to be here. My name is Beth. I'm from the Nottoway tribe, and as a Iroquois speaker that's our culture, Iroquois speaker. We're in the Algonquian lands, but I'm an Iroquois speaker. It is customary for us to begin with our Thanksgiving address, which literally means the words that we're supposed to say before everything else. And so, if you will, I'll say the top three in Nottoway, and then I'll flow with the rest. So, Yugwari huadase, egwe hegwe, one jugaktiget jarad, Yugwari huadase ine ahon roach, one jugaktiget jarad, Yugwari huadase awa, one jugaktiget jarad. So we are grateful. The first line is we are grateful. Yugwari huadase. And in the middle, we say what we're grateful for. Egwe hegwe. So we're grateful for the people. I'm grateful for all of y'all. Thanks so much for having me here. Grateful for all the work that you do. One jugaktiget jarad means that now we're all of one mind. So we're of one mind together. We go on to say that we're grateful for the lands. All of us come from lands, many different states that make up these watersheds. We're grateful for those lands. Ine ahon roach. We're grateful for awa. What does that sound like? Yeah, you got it. Water. We're so grateful for the water. Of course, we know water is life. And it goes on to say we are grateful for the fish in the water that help keep the water clean and that gives us food. We're grateful for the trees that give us oxygen and provides us with things that we can build with. We're grateful for the animals that teach us how to be in relationship with the land. We're grateful for the birds that teach us how to sing. We are grateful for the sustainers, our corn, bean, and squash. We're grateful for medicine plants, the herbs that help to heal us. And we're grateful for the people that know how to use those medicine plants. We are grateful for the sun. It gives us energy. We're grateful for the wind and the thunder beings that bring change. We're grateful for the rain that replenishes all of our water. It keeps going, y'all. We are grateful for the moon. She governs our tides and our women. We're grateful for the stars at night because it reminds us that light is there and that we're never quite alone. And it goes on, there's even a clause in there that says, look, I'm human, I probably forgot something. so we're going to be grateful for that too. And we also say that our last line, we save our most precious words for our Creator, for however you define that. And we're grateful for just all of these things and recognize that it's our relationship to be caretakers of all of these different elements of creation. So with that, we are all of one mind, Nawe. All right, y'all. I'm so thrilled to talk about Clean River Day with y'all. This started in 2011. We are in our 14th year, and so this means that this was before we had high-tech cameras in our pockets. So very sadly, this is the best image I have from that first day. I had just finished my first leg of my career. I was a state park ranger, and I was enrolled in my community. We just gotten state recognition, and the style of leadership that my elders have always used in our community is that you take what you're good at and you bring that to the tribe, and you meet a need there. So as a young one, I knew how to do cleanups. I knew how to do nature hikes. I was a park ranger. So this was the first activity that I volunteered to lead for us. And we decided on Carey's Bridge. It's a boat ramp, public boat ramp that is near our tribal center in Capron, Southampton County, Virginia. And the cleanup, there'd not been a cleanup there for probably ever. I mean, you can imagine. We show up, and we picked up over 30 tires. We picked up a whole trailer full of trash. And can you see what that white item is on the top? Yes, someone had dumped their whole bathroom suite in the ravine beside the boat ramp. So pretty epic day. We couldn't believe it. This is, a place that is so important to our history. It connects the circle and square tracts of our reservation land. There's just stories and stories of our folks being on these lands. In modern day, we use that as a place where we welcome new citizens. And so this is just, it was a reason why we chose this place, and just couldn't believe what we had found. So it was just a cleanup that first year. It was a county-wide event, and so we had been invited by Jeff Turner, the former Blackwater Nottoway Riverkeeper, to be a part of it. So, some of these things are just beginning with being invited to do an activity. So next years, we decided, okay, we've done the huge cleanup. We came back, and we've got some light trash, things that had accumulated over the past year. So we decided to add kayaks. Let's see what's up and down the shoreline. And Nottoway is a pretty gnarly river. It can be, it's not quite tidal. It's really driven by the rains that come into the channel. And so it can go from 1 to 2 feet to, you'll see in future pictures, just, huge depths. And so it's tricky getting up and down the river, so you really need to understand what you're doing. But nevertheless, that's how we started kayaking on the river. And, skipped one. And as y'all know, there's always really great enthusiasm when you start a program. Everybody wants to come out and do it. And then after a couple of years, they're got other things they want to do. And so I look at these years as those years of building consistency. It's just showing up when not everybody's showing up and when you don't have 30 tires to pull out. And sometimes it's really cold. I mean, this picture is me and Crystal. There was to be fair, there was a young citizen who was at University of Virginia, and he was leading a powwow that weekend, so everybody left. That was poor timing. But still, we showed up. We kept showing up, even when there wasn't a whole lot of trash that we were finding at that point. Until 2016, we started to notice some changes in the litter that was showing up. So now we've gone beyond just the bait tackle things that we were seeing, and now we've got so much more that we're seeing that is old. We see beer cans we've never seen before, glass soda bottles from the 90s. I mean, why are we picking up so old trash when we should have picked it up in that first time? So we connected the dots. There was actually also a whole logging truck tire set in the ravine, so I had to call some muscle to pull that out. And then that Jeff Turner, that same riverkeeper, had posted recent pictures of drone footage to show the expanded logging due to the expanding wood pellet production. And so that observation helped us understand the connections between what else was happening in the watershed, and then it started to make us think, well, what's going on with the wood pellets? What do we have as a stakeholder in this conversation? What can we do? It just really opened our eyes. In 2017, I started talking it up. I was telling people, keep coming back. I was getting them, more educated about what was happening. And we started to add food. Everybody likes food, so it started to grow. We started to add some food. 2018, Will asked me what was the most bizarre thing we found. I think this is probably my favorite, was this adult floats. I am a surfer, so I had a wetsuit in my truck. Thankfully that day I was able to pull it out and put a good use to it. You could see sometimes rivers is so flooded that we can't even get into the parking lot, so then we just go to other places. And then 2019, so now we've got the cleanup is going, we've got a steady crew, we've added a feast, and then we started to look at establishing a tribal garden. And so 2019 in the afternoon was when we first did a corn planting, and so intergenerational, we were able to bring folks from, and one thing that's important to notice about the Nottoway community is that hardly any of us younger folk live in that territory. Our ancestors, our elders are, still on the lands, but a lot of folks have to move to urban centers, Hampton Roads, Washington, D.C. area, Richmond area for jobs and school, and there's just not much for us to, in those counties. And so it's really, we have to have activities to bring people home in order for them to be exposed to the things that, that are their heritage. Y'all know what happened in 2020 and 2021. And so during lockdown, my husband and I, we also have an organization called the Alliance of Native Seed Keepers. We decided to keep the garden going, and so we went from a corn planting to adding a whole bunch of sunflowers. And sunflowers in our culture indicate the coming of people. So we really just planted them there because they were going to take care of themselves and be beautiful. But you'll see that once we were able to get out of lockdown, people were so excited to come back to Clean River Day. That first year was just amazing. We had so many more citizens come. We added storytelling. We started all these different booths that showed different projects that tribal members were working on. It was just a real day of celebration, and just so grateful that we had this placeholder every spring of people able to just know that it's time to come home, that this is, this is what we do. And so I hope that you're seeing this evolution. So in the past few years, you're going to see in these next few slides just this momentum building and how being so connected to land got us attention. The Nature Conservancy would see our articles in the local paper. They were looking at some of the work that I lead. I've been a park ranger, I've been in the conservation field, but that really showed to people that we're doing something, and so we were able to gain trust with some local partners. And the Nature Conservancy has quite a bit of ownership of land in our territory. So, this is also Darren, Biden administration, Deb Howland, Indigenous co-stewardship, we're really in that golden era of calling attention to that, and so we're able to benefit from the atmosphere and develop a deeper connection with the Nature Conservancy. And part of that is inviting them to the cleanup just to get to know us first, and then having them test us out. And from there, we are fully, we have an agreement with them. We work with them in several of their properties. We're able to bring our tribal citizens out there and explain just the rich biodiversity of the sites. And so this is another opportunity for folks to come and visit places that aren't open to the public, but they're open to us. This is us at Cactus Hill. And then also this past year, we have been working with them to name an unnamed stream in our language. And so you'll hear more of the Song Creek, and I don't have it in my head right now to say it to you, but we're working on the paperwork now to send it to the USGS and actually get our Nottoway stream in the actual system, so then you could all look it up on the databases. I do work for the Sierra Club, and we, nationwide, and thankfully I work in the conservation strategy team, and so this Indigenous Code stewardship work is something that can be applied to all chapters and all the work that we do, and I'm really proud that this past year our board of directors adopted an Indigenous co-stewardship policy. If you'd like any questions about that, I would be really happy to talk to you about that. But it's really demonstrating, of course, that we know that Indigenous people have inherent wisdom and care and connection, and we should be at the table. And so I've been able to lead outings and have partners from Sierra Club and other places come and see the work that we're doing in a way that they can hear about us and see us through our own eyes. and through our own lands and water. So also very paddle enthusiast. So if you like paddling, also come talk to me. So 2024, it's a huge year. We were invited to be a part of the America the Beautiful Freshwater Challenge. For a brief moment, we were on the White House website as the Nottoway Indian Tribe of Virginia. We were the only state-recognized tribe. I think I cut the picture off. I think we're right there. But we were the only state-recognized tribe to be invited on that list. We're very proud of that. And this actually happened at the same time that the outfitter that we've been partnering with on some of the programs that we were doing decided to retire, and she wanted the rig to come to us and offered a very, very deep discount we couldn't say no to, and so we're in the process of getting through all the legalities to have a nice and insured, compliant experience for everybody. So it's just, it continues to grow. All right, so that brings us to 2025. And so there's a lot of momentum, you see, like one toilet, 30-some tires, over 1,000 pounds of trash, has brought us to 2025, where this past spring, we actually had moved the Clean River Day date up 2 weeks, and that proved to be interesting in a couple of ways. One, we had the same Corps come early in that morning, and we were walking around, and there wasn't that much trash, thankfully, and we did our kind of normal 2 or 3 bags, but one thing that was different is that we started to see medicine plants that we hadn't noticed before. Just being there 2 weeks earlier had given us a chance to see things that were popping up like wild ginger that we just hadn't seen yet. And then we were actually looking where there's vernal pools. And that gave me an opportunity to tell folks about vernal pools. And as a slick Sierran, I was trying to weave in things that threaten our vernal pools and our wetlands, and so in a way that hopefully people would get it. But they do get it when you see it in real time, when you can show, like, here's this river, but then here's this body of water that's separate but yet so important. And when we got really close, we saw baby salamander. And so we were so amazed. And that the language chair was with me, and he has done so much work, that same one that held the powwow the same week at a Clean River Day. Our language work has progressed so much. And so what we've decided is that, it's 2 things. One is we have, come to a point where Clean River Day was like clean as a verb. We're going to clean the river. And there was just a moment where we realized, like, it's all the way clean, but we're like, it's clean like an adjective, when you think about that first slide of where we started and then where we are today, when we're going around and we're looking at medicine plants and we're looking at the, new life. And so we're very excited that in our 15th year, we are revamping. We're going to invite a lot of the partners that have come in and helped us in the past. We are going to have a much more formal agenda of it's a nature hike, it's language with trash bags. We're still going to pick up trash, but we're really going to be more intentional about the celebration of all the things that it's brought with us. And hopefully by then we'll have the outfitter going. We have lots to do in 2026. I have to train all of these people to know how to be river guides. The Nottoway Water and Lands Initiative, that encompasses our work with the Nature Conservancy and our language work and so much more. So I'm so proud to be able to have a moment to reflect on just what one cleanup could do for our community and how it has transformed into just a multi-pronged initiative that is only going to continue to gain speed and momentum. So many thanks to Will and Jess and Brittany, and just excited to be here and to hear more. So no way.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here with you all to kick off the final day of the Marine Debris Summit. I'm grateful to be up here with some amazing speakers and all of you here who have spent, your careers working in marine debris and have had a great time the first day learning from you all, and hope that this international case study can also provide some insight into the global impacts of marine plastic pollution through a bit of a different lens. So my research project is called Citizens of a Changing Coast, a socio-ecological analysis of marine plastic pollution in Scottish island communities. And I guess I should also introduce myself. My name is McKenna, and I studied at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. And I'm also the founder of a socio-ecological storytelling project that came about after this research called Hebridean Coastal Stories. And I've gotten a few questions during the poster session yesterday and just through different conversations of why Scotland, why is this important to be talking about at the Mid-Atlantic Marine Debris Summit, where I would say that is the other side of the Atlantic. But also, as our keynote speaker yesterday pointed out, we are shaped by our physical and natural landscapes that are around us in our communities, but also by our waste, unfortunately. These island communities on the edge of the Atlantic, across the Atlantic from us, are impacted by our waste here in the Mid-Atlantic region of the US and Canada, and are definitely feeling those impacts as well. So I think that's an interesting link, and hopefully also, with some of the principles of Marco being interdisciplinary research and collaboration, and that knowledge sharing piece, I think is really important to highlight through this case study. So I hope it's insightful and can help some of your future research and outreach as well here in the Mid-Atlantic. But just a bit of a background, I have been really passionate about plastics since I was 15, so almost 10 years ago now, which is crazy to think about. But when it came to choose a dissertation topic, when I was a student, I knew I wanted to do something with plastics. I didn't know exactly how, but I started asking around with different environmental NGOs and local stakeholders to kind of understand from a Scottish perspective what is the most important way to document plastic pollution and the lived experiences of those that are experiencing this crisis, and found that the islands that are often left out of marine governance systems were feeling the pressure of these mass amounts of marine plastic washing up in their rural island communities and not having the support to deal with it. But those experiences were not documented. So I wanted to be able to document that through this research and further communicate it. But also the piece of when crafting this research project, there was very few studies out there on the social and cultural impacts of marine plastic pollution. As you can imagine, the utilitarian dimensions of marine systems have largely been the focus of marine debris research, while the loss of identity, heritage, connection, and blue health have been absent from the conversation. But these two papers are great. My paper is not published yet, though it will be next year. But these, if you are interested in having an academic read, these two papers really helped shape the methods and inspiration as well for this project, one based in Ghana and more just generally of a human well-being perspective of plastics. But for those who may not be familiar with where the Outer Hebrides are, they are this western island chain on the edge of the Atlantic on the west coast of Scotland. And the island that I focused on was the Isle of Lewis, which is at the top of that island chain and where the capital of the Outer Hebrides is. But as you can imagine, this is definitely a place that is shaped by the natural environment, by the climate, which makes it an interesting place to study marine debris due to the different currents and the rates of, the winds and the different climate conditions that impact where litter accumulates, how it's transported, as well as the rates of degradation. But people are very connected to the land. Their identity is tied to their natural environment. Their heritage has physical sites there, but also their language is shaped by their natural environment as well. So when there are changes, including the presence of marine plastic pollution, that can greatly impact that sense of connection to their surroundings. And this is just a word, pardon my Scots Gaelic pronunciation, but dúthchas, which roughly translates to sense of place, which came up as a word quite a bit in interviews that I did with participants, but also just through exploring, felt that myself as well. But I did I kind of sought out to intently take this two-pronged approach of qualitative research and quantitative. So did both semi-structured interviews with 25 participants that are either from the island originally, so indigenous islanders, or those that had moved there from mainland UK or Europe even. There is as Beth was highlighting on her reservation, having younger folks leaving, that's also a common trait for younger folks on the island. So it is an aging population as well as just less indigenous islanders that are there now. So 5 indigenous islanders participated in this study. And I also recognize, the lack of trust that can come from academic researchers coming into indigenous communities, which I think is also why there was a smaller subset of them, to gain that trust and not just be a parachute scientist, which is why I returned back and talk more about that later and why I started the storytelling project. But I very much didn't want to just have this research for my dissertation project and just end it there. And I guess you don't submit physical papers anymore, but collect dust in the archives, I guess, when I submitted it. So I was very grateful for all the participants that participated in this study to help create this understanding of human plastic interactions, which was the goal. So both through the interviews as well as some participatory mapping to understand spatially where these interactions and relationships are happening with waste, which crafted my research questions. So first, to touch on the mapping piece, in total there were 66 locations that were identified as marine plastic pollution hotspots by 22 participants. 3 participants couldn't identify one sole area that was worse off than others and said the whole island is a marine plastic pollution hotspot at the end of the day. And as you can see on the map, it might be hard to tell, but the blue circles are where more participants had identified those areas, and especially on the western side where it is that right on the Atlantic, and there's coves that the tides bring in these plastics, and they're very rough, they're very hard to get out because they're not accessible. There's no roads that go there. They're only accessible by boat or on foot, so it makes it quite difficult to remove these. But yeah, so this was kind of spatially how the participants identified where plastic pollution is occurring and where they're interacting with it most. And I overlaid that with a historical data set from Marine Conservation Society, which is a UK-wide charity. And this data set started back in 1994. And I was able to use the research up until 2023, because I conducted this in 2024. And those are the white points, to kind of understand where citizen science has already happened and where those gaps may be. So this can be a tool for both NGOs, but also local government and local stakeholders on where it needs specific and special attention. So combining, I think, both, the scientific knowledge of how these plastics are getting there through previous published academic papers with that local knowledge is really important to understand and inform further action in the future. But now to get into more of the exciting things, which is the social pieces or the interview results. One of the main things I wanted to document is the human plastic pollution interactions on the island. So I'll start with beach cleaning, which I think you all will find quite interesting. So a lot of folks have participated either in organized community cleans with local groups or their local councils as well in their individual villages, or unorganized litter collection. So that maybe is them themselves going out once a week or partnering with someone in their village to go out, make it a little less daunting. There was a theme of, it can be overwhelming to tackle these large amounts of plastics that are ending up on their beaches or on their crofts and their shores. So going out with a partner or a friend makes it a little less daunting and more manageable. But this is just a quote from one of the participants sharing why they enjoy, going out to community cleans, and it is that sort of intergenerational collaboration of folks that are younger in the community, folks that are older. Everyone's there for the same reason, and it feels really good to have that sense of stewardship and give back to their community. So there's definitely a positive feel for organized community cleans. But also the piece of beachcombing I found quite interesting. A lot of folks that were older in the in the participant group that I worked with remember doing that beach combing as a kid, finding sea glass, messages in a bottle even, and things that could actually be useful in their island culture and upcycled for their craft. But now a lot of it is single-use plastics that are not able to be usable, and it can be quite frustrating to be interacting with that. So when they are going out to recreate or do these sorts of activities and try to find, fun different things, they're encountering plastics instead. And also recreational activities, which links to that unorganized litter collection. So whether you're boating, fishing, walking your dog, bird watching, folks are interacting with marine plastic pollution almost every time they go out. So having that personal sense of needing to now bring a bag with them while they walk their dog to pick up trash that they find, or those that are going out for their mental health, for a cold water swim like many did this morning with the plunge. There's that negative impact of, I'm going out in my community to engage with my blue space, but now I'm encountering plastics on the walk back in or things like that. So some folks were also frustrated, even miles out at sea while they're fishing or recreating, and are frustrated about this quote specifically from fish farm debris and polystyrene. But then the traditional practices, which I think is really interesting. So both through intangible ways of cultural heritage on the island. So this example from this quote is talking about a traditional land management practice of utilizing seaweed to fertilize the soil on their croft. This is someone that had purchased a croft from mainland Scotland and recently moved and wanted to embrace some of these local traditional practices for managing the land. And they live right across from a mussel farm. So it's quite frustrating when they have this access to seaweed, infinite seaweed on their beach, and are trying to dry it, and then there's issues with the presence of microplastics, mostly polystyrene beads and bits of nets and fibers. So they had expressed that they have a giant pile of seaweed and it's now unusable because they don't want to contaminate their soil and something that they're going to be growing food and different crops in. So it can be frustrating and also difficult to then continue this traditional knowledge and pass it down for future generations. So that's becoming increasingly difficult, as well as interacting with their physical cultural sites, which I'll talk a bit more later. But also upcycling, which I kind of mentioned, but upcycling definitely was a very common theme. 17 out of the 25 participants had upcycled something that they had found on the beach. So these are just some examples, my favorite being the fish farm float that was turned into a sand pit for children. And then buckets, I think, is quite relevant for our group. A few decades ago, folks had said that there was a mass increase in finding American paint buckets on their beaches, and you can still, in one of the villages, go, and a lot of people have them outside their front door that they use for peat collection for their individual home energy. So these are just some of the examples and some more photos. But some folks I had come in, asking if folks had upcycled or interacted with marine debris in this way. And it was sort of an obvious yes, of course we do. We're islanders, we take in, whatever washes up. Obviously, as I had said earlier, it is becoming increasingly difficult when things aren't usable. But for some things like salmon farm feed pipes, apparently physical fights have broken out at beach cleanups over these because they can be used for so many different things. So I found that really interesting, as well as the local social norms when it comes to claiming marine debris. So I was on a walking interview with a participant, and we came across this net that was pushed above the high tide line and kind of claimed with this wooden pallet over it. And they had shared that that means that someone is claiming that and will come back for it later and not to take it, which is really cool. But this is just a quote as well of, kind of upcycling or reusing can be seen as this Western or middle class approach where those that are living with this and live in rural communities with, only so many resources, things that come from the sea or other materials are all usable. But to get into the impacts, I know I'm low on time, so I'm just going to kind of speed through these. But largely, The social impacts included a reduction in time for community and recreational activities, so less time to go and participate or go for a kayak or go for a swim or participate in community events like a Kaylee because they felt the need to go clean the beach. An impact on quality of recreational activities, impacted mental health and well-being, and volunteer burnout. So these are some quotes that I think illustrate this quite well, especially this bottom one of feeling less connected to their locality due to the presence of global marine debris. For cultural, as I said, the impacted engagement with tangible natural and cultural heritage elements, which diminishes cultural experiences and connections, as well as that traditional practices and knowledge. So this is a local site, or I guess a cultural site. These are lazy beds where people would grow food. This is now very close to the coast, but years ago or centuries ago would have been a bit farther. But this is a very common area for plastic to blow up from the beach and be found in the lazy beds. And then economically as well, obviously, as we know, there's economic impacts when it comes to marine debris. The biggest one that I found interesting was like the associated costs of beach cleaning. So individuals having to take on the financial burden of cleaning marine debris because they don't have the support they need, except for a free skip once a year from the local council. Also, this is a side note, if anyone knows why cows are like specifically drawn to blue things, that was very common. If people don't know why, but they're often finding cows, that have stomachs full of plastic, it's always the blue rope. So, yeah. And one piece of this research that is really important is like the future of waste governance, and these are just sentiments or common themes that individuals had shared of wanting that more accountability, supportive, collaborative nature for how we can move forward in addressing this on the community scale, but also being inclusive and informative. So these are just some quotes from individuals highlighting that as well. And all of this, research and individual experiences from the participants paired with, other published marine debris research helped shape some key locally focused recommendations for how to address this under these three categories of removal, prevention, and support for island communities. The main one being that I'll highlight is like the mental health resources. We have seen published mental health resources for climate anxiety, eco-anxiety, but I'd be welcome to hear if anyone has seen this, but I haven't personally seen any related to those that are living on the front lines of marine plastic pollution. And that was definitely something that folks felt like they needed. And yeah, just continuing a bit of the community engagement piece and sharing the research findings with those that participated and the local communities to limit that parachute science approach and make sure that through this new project, Hebridean Coastal Stories, that folks are being included through research, storytelling, and local engagement as well. And I'd be happy to chat more about that in the panel or throughout the rest of the day. So thank you so much for your time, and just again a big thank you to those that participated in the study that made this happen and for sharing their lived experiences and trust in me, and thank you for all of you for your time.
Good morning. Is this a good volume? Can you guys hear me? Okay. I'm really grateful to be here, so thank you to the organizers of this event for having me. I'm Noah Tait. I'm a marine scientist at the Virginia Institute of Marine Science and the Center for Coastal Resources Management. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the National TRAP program, which is this kind of community of practice that we've been charged with creating by the NOAA Marine Debris Program for removing derelict traps, crab and lobster traps mainly, from the environment. So just, can I get a show of hands if you are familiar with or if you've heard of the ghost fishing issue? Perfect, great. I figured it would be a lot of us, but for anyone that isn't, basically, shout out to Greenfin Studio for this great graphic that they've generated. I see Dave and Allison back there. They're a lovely environmental communications consulting firm that made this graphic for us that demonstrates just the life cycle of a crab or lobster trap. So there are some exceptions, but in most cases, traps that are used in the commercial and recreational shellfish fisheries are individual traps with a line and a buoy attached, marking them on the surface. And there are a number of reasons that those traps can get lost in the environment. Storms and interactions with boaters are two of the main ones that we see. And then the issue is that once that trap is lost from the fisher that owns it, it continues to function as a trap for, depending on the type of trap, anywhere from 3 to 30 years. And so whatever goes into the trap dies and becomes bait to attract other creatures to go in. And so a little bit of a history lesson, but in 2008, the National Marine Fisheries Service declared the blue crab fishery in the Chesapeake Bay a fishery failure, citing a natural resources disaster. And derelict traps were determined to be contributing to the decline in population of blue crabs in the bay. And so because of that, because it was a federal fishery disaster, there was federal aid funding that was funneled to Virginia and Maryland to address some of these issues. And so some of the ways that the issue was addressed, for one, the winter crab dredge fishery in Virginia got shut down. So the crab pot season in Virginia, and I think Maryland too, operates from about April to December every year, and then there's an off season. But it used to be the case that there were about 75 guys in Virginia that would go out and dredge the bottom and kind of dig crabs up out of the mud, which was problematic for a number of reasons, and so it was shut down and remains closed to this day. But those fishers, that was part of their annual income. And so VIMS, in partnership with the Virginia Marine Resources Commission, was identified as a good target to collaborate with these watermen who had just lost part of their income, and actually pay them to go out and work they know how to work the water better than anybody, obviously. So they used these basically just fish finders, these side scanning sonar units. Brittany's got one set up out at her table if you want to go check one out, to locate these traps and pull them out of the water. And this was, primarily between 2008 and 2014, with other kind of one-off efforts depending on funding availability. But during the bulk of the program, they were able to remove around 34,000 traps in Virginia waters of the Chesapeake Bay and the Eastern Shore in just a few years. So yeah, I can just point out on the bottom left there, that's Gloucester Point at the York River. That's where VIMS is located, and there's a pretty high density of traps there. And then I don't know if any of you have been to Tangier Island out in the middle of the bay, but that's just a community of watermen out there. All they do is fish blue crabs, and so there are an insane amount of derelict traps out there. I should have mentioned at the beginning that it's estimated that 10 to 20% of all pots fished each year are lost. So it's a pretty significant number. And we have a fisheries economist on our team at VIMS, Andrew Sheld, who did a study just kind of quantifying the economic impact of these traps and of the removal efforts that we had. And he was able to prove that the removal program led to an increase of about 38 million pounds in additional harvest that would have been caught and killed in derelict traps otherwise, which in dollar values, and as a dollar value is about $33.5 million in harvest. And then we had a grad student who later on did a field experiment kind of confirming that these derelict traps, if they're in proximity to an actively fished commercial or recreational pot, they will compete with that pot and can reduce the harvest of the actively fished traps by up to 30%. So with some of that in mind, VIMS was identified as a good candidate to lead a new effort, which we call the Nationwide Fishing Trap Removal Assessment and Prevention, or TRAP program. It's an $8 million 4-year grant, which is the largest federal grant that's ever been awarded to VIMS. And it's kind of similar to what Mike Moore was saying about their Boat US Foundation grant, where we run a subaward competition for any group that's interested can apply around the country and territories and freely associated states in the US. And we have about $1.5 million each year to dole out to groups to operate similar trap removal projects in their own regions and fisheries. So this is just kind of highlighting the projects that we had in year one. We were kind of represented well around the entire United States, and also had the Republic of Palau, which is out in the Pacific, but they're a freely associated state, so they were able to participate as well. So all in all, there was also funding for the Virginia removals to operate under VIMS, continue to operate, and so we had 11 subawards that covered 10 states, 7 fisheries, and 4 of the 5 Marco states were represented, other than New Jersey, which we're getting them next year. So, but one of the main goals of the TRAP program was to kind of collect a standardized data set across all of the regions and fisheries for these trap removal projects. We didn't invent the trap removal idea at VIMS. There are people that have been doing this for years and all over the country. But there was kind of a lack of a harmonious effort among people to kind of collect data on the traps, and that stuff is really important for kind of demonstrating the reason that funds need to continue to be funneled towards these trap removals. And so, we require all of our subawardees to use this Survey 123 form for each trap that they pull out, which it has like a lat-long coordinate. They're required to record all of the bycatch that they find in the trap, whether or not it's still fishing, take pictures of everything. So, and all of those data feed into a public-facing dashboard, which you can check out at www.trapprogram.org. So for the Virginia removals that took place in 2025, we had funds to contract 10 watermen to remove traps. We've been able to kind of model where the hot spots of traps are in Virginia waters and send them out to those areas to make it more of an efficient effort. And they were able to remove just over 1,000 traps over the course of 15 days per waterman. So I guess 150 working days. But yeah, an interesting thing to highlight is that about 75% of the pots still had buoys on them, which is kind of like when you go out, that's kind of the low-hanging fruit, is to catch the ones with buoys first because they're easy. You don't have to use sonar or anything. And I think just because of the lapse in funding to do this for the few years preceding the project, there were a lot of those that had accumulated. And they're, even if they're brand new and they have a buoy on them, if they're out there during the close season, they're considered derelict because it's illegal for them to be out there. And I'm going to skip over some of the number stuff because I feel like I'll probably go over time if I get too deep into it. But if you're a number nerd like me, you can come see me afterwards and we can talk. So Maryland is the other group that's wrapped up their removal efforts for the years in the Mid-Atlantic. They were also able to get almost 1,000 pots and other pieces of debris out. I'll shout out the organization that is our subaward in that area is the Oyster Recovery Partnership. They're a nonprofit out of Annapolis. And yeah, they do things a little different in Maryland. They don't give sonar units to their watermen. They just send them out and they dredge the bottom, and so they pull up a lot more stuff that is not necessarily traps. So you get, I think one of them pulled up like a pressure washer or something like that. But yeah, they also did a great job. And then These are our two ongoing Mid-Atlantic projects. Scott's here, and so is Brittany, who are the PIs for our projects operating in the Delaware Inland Bays and the Long Island Sound. So Delaware Sea Grant and the University of Delaware have been working in the inland bays, just these bays right out here. And interestingly enough, there's no commercial blue crabbing in those bays, so there are a lot of recreational pots that get lost out there, and I've been very impressed by their ability to kind of gather up volunteers that want to go out and remove those because they don't have the waterman manpower to address the issue. And so I'm sure it's probably more by now, but as of when I made these slides, they had gotten 125 traps out of the bays. And then the Cornell Cooperative Extension of Suffolk County in New York is working with a conglomerate of nonprofits and consultants in Connecticut to remove traps, American lobster traps in the Long Island Sound. And I actually just checked yesterday, it's more than 300 now, but yeah, they're still hard at work. And so yeah, just shout out, both you guys are doing a great job. And I apologize for these sad pictures, but it is just important, I think, to highlight this is one of the issues that we have with these traps that are out there. It's not just the target species of the traps that gets caught and killed. There are multiple other significant natural resources that are, meeting their doom in these traps. We had a bufflehead duck, you can see, that dove down into one of the traps and got caught in Virginia this past year. The Mid-Atlantic region, I'm sure we all know diamondback terrapin as a important cultural and natural resource. And they get caught in blue crab traps pretty commonly. And then, yeah, we had groups operating in Florida that were pulling out baby nurse sharks and things like that. I do want to highlight at the bottom left there's a Nassau grouper that was caught in a stone crab trap in Florida, and it's a endangered species. It's categorized as an endangered species under the ESA, so it's one of those things that it's why we're requiring pictures from all these people and bycatch data so that we can kind of bring these things forth and say, hey, these are killing endangered species and they're impacting harvest numbers and different things like that. So again, I'm going to just briefly skip over these numbers, but I do want to talk a little bit about a citizen science component of the program that I've kind of helped try to get off the ground. So yeah, we in Virginia specifically, we have a collection permit, a scientific collection permit that if you register with us, you're able to go out and just remove traps on your own, unfunded, but just as a volunteer effort if that's something that you're interested in. Which we get questions from people all the time saying, hey, there's been this trap that's been sitting in the creek behind my house for, however long, and I don't know if I can go remove it or not. I mean, I think for every one person that asks that question, there are 100 that probably just don't and go out and get it, which technically is illegal, so we're just trying to get as many people under our umbrella as possible. But I just want to highlight this one guy, Andy Citizen. He's, technically it was his nonprofit, the Northumberland Association for Progressive Stewardship. It was really just him out there in a kayak, and he was able to remove 30 pots in January. It was very cold. He's just a hardcore guy and just really wanted to do it. And so he did a really great job, and he's, I think, got a couple more people on his team this year, but they're raring to go again. And also, it's not just limited to Virginia. We have this cool case study where some folks from the University of California at Santa Barbara reached out to us, and they wanted to kind of pilot a program in Southern California to use sonar to remove traps, and they did such a great job. They applied for funding for the second round, and they were funded by us, so it's just one of those cool success stories that can come out of like the citizen science or volunteering data. And so yeah, that's I'm over time a little bit, but that's all I've got. And it says questions, but we'll I guess hold off on questions for the panel. But if you do want to volunteer to remove derelict crab or lobster traps, you can scan that QR code and you'll go to a registration page, and I'll send you more info. So yeah, that's all I got. But.
And with that, we'll take any questions you may have.
This question's for Noah. Two questions, really. The traps that had buoys and the traps that are still functional, do you guys have like a program, or do you make an effort to return those traps to the owners? And if not, what do you do with those traps that are still functional? And then I got one more question after that. So.
Yeah, that's a question we get all the time. It really depends on the state. There are some states where the people that remove the traps will make their best effort, or there's still a tag on, they can tell who the trap belongs to. They'll actually, bring it back to that specific waterman, or it'll just go into kind of a general marketplace. In Virginia, the guys will typically just keep the trap if it's still in good shape, and otherwise it goes to a landfill. We're kind of working on figuring out some more sustainable solutions for disposal. But then I do want to also point out there are certain states where the law requires actually that even if the trap is in perfectly good shape, that it be destroyed as soon as it's pulled out of the water. That's the case in Louisiana and Florida with stone crab traps, I think. So we have Policy Innovation Lab is another part of this program that I didn't have time to highlight, but it's a collaboration with the University of Georgia Law School, and they're working on kind of aggregating what some of these kind of gaps in regulations are for derelict crab traps, and trying to make it so that people can go and take new policy recommendations to their regulators. But.
And I will say, if I can add on for Delaware, since our fishery is recreational only, we only go after pots that have no buoy, and there's no way to identify who they are. So if they can be reused, we just say, hey, free for all, anyone can come grab them. But if not, they all go to scrap metal recycling, so nothing goes into the landfill is the goal.
And then this might not necessarily pertain to the overall topic, but you had brought it up pertaining to the dredging for crabs. Didn't Virginia just open back up this past year, or is this coming year?
They almost did,
okay.
But I think it was tabled. But yeah, there are some folks pushing for it, which, that's a conversation. That's a conversation
right.
for another time. But yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
So basically, digging a bunch of females out of the water, which crashes the population. So
yeah. Thank you.
I have a quick question before I turn this over to Greg. For Beth, you were, you shared a little bit about the water guide program. I was wondering if you could talk to us about the importance of, I guess I'm asking you to talk about highways, if that helps.
About highways?
About the importance of the waterways.
Oh, the importance of the waterways. The waterways, I was like, yes, thank you, Jess. Oh, no way. When we're on the water, y'all know, who here has paddled on a kayak, on a canoe? Yes. I was a park ranger for many years, and if you ask me which activity was the most impactful to me or to the audiences that I was interacting with, it was always this canoe trip on Lower Chipoks Creek. It's just so peaceful. Like, we would get on the water, and it's easy paddling, so most people could do it. And immediately, everybody's blood pressure would just drop. And then we're all in a group setting together, and we'd have different things in mind that we'd want to talk about, but a lot of things just emerge. Like, if an eagle comes by and swoops down and picks up a fish, well, then that's what we're going to talk about, and we're going to relate to that. Or, This past Friday, I was actually on the Black River in the Cape Fear watershed, so down in North Carolina with the Great Kahari River Initiative. And that's an outfitter that grew out of a tribe, and actually they started their outfitter program from clearing log jams in their waterways. They couldn't access it. And because they have, it's a big trip, so they need multiple guides, and they pulled from their drum group. And so while we were taking breaks, the drum group would start to sing. And, so it's just these moments you can imagine. We're in an amazing ecosystem. We have so many things that are appearing, inviting stories, and we're doing it in a way that we're at peace. When I greeted you all, I forgot to tell you what Askanaha means, and it's, so you're alive, and are you at peace? That's how we want to make sure that we're engaging, is that we're all cool. And so, when I think about what is an activity that can bring us so many different threads of conversation, we can talk about ecology, we can talk about history, we can weave in culture. These are things that our people have been doing on the waters for many years. I live in North Carolina now, just over the state border. I live alongside the Chowan River, and where the Roanoke River comes in. So I'm still in my watershed. The Nottoway and the Blackwater Rivers start in Virginia, meet at the state line, form the Chowan. And I work a lot with indigenous communities all within the North Carolina region and Virginia. And since I was a park ranger, I've had so many conversations with folks about just like our people visiting each other and what we would be doing. We'd be trading news, we'd be bringing each other goods, we'd be trading seeds, we'd be talking about, all sorts of different the native hotline is what we like to say. And so this is just an activity that is, of course, embedded in our DNA, but yet unless we have intentional ways that people can do that, it's something that is not as accessible to so many people. And then when you think about the Nottoway River, for example, there's a lot of private property owners up and down that river. There are no state parks. There's not, unless you have somebody that knows which put in to take you through, and then when is it was it too dangerous to paddle? Sometimes it's very dangerous. And so, so even though this is an activity that is so inherent to our communities, it still comes in a modern day with challenges. And so for us, the Nottoway River Guides is a way to, just formalize what we're doing internally. We've got young folks that are really excited to come and be a part of it, ones that don't care about powwow, and ones that are, rarely seen in other activities. And so it's doing exactly what we hoped, and it's giving them an opportunity to come. Hopefully it's going to create jobs and be a way that and then also we're thrilled to be working with other Native communities that want to do similar activities. And so it's something that's going to continue to grow and just feels so good. And so I can't wait for all y'all to come paddle with us and for us to be able to show you our home. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a question for all of you. Wonderful work, everybody, but especially for Beth and for Chloe. You're bringing in of indigenous voices into your work and your conclusions show that diversity comes in many forms, and that word has become very manipulated and used in all kinds of ways, but I can see from your answers just now how important it is for you to show a multitude of voices and a multitude of perspectives. So could you speak more to that, especially how it comes from your perspective, how you bring in your unique point of view into your work? Thank you.
I think, especially someone not being from the community in which I worked, it was really important to kind of just sit back and to absorb kind of the stories that I was hearing and the experiences. And I think there is, especially in the scientific space, obviously, the lack of recognition for local knowledge, indigenous knowledge, and I think we need to kind of further integrate into interdisciplinary research from my perspective. I think that's what's the most effective, the most compelling to a wide variety of audiences. And I could tell and heard directly from folks that I worked with that they were grateful that the science was being bridged with the local knowledge and that it was being integrated, even if it was a small-scale master's dissertation, that they were grateful that someone was giving them a voice and a platform to speak about this, because it was, as I said, a semi-structured interview, so a lot of different topics came up, a lot of frustrations around, things that were happening in the marine space, but also people upset about dog owners not picking up their dog's waste. It was a way for folks to just kind of vent and have a place to share their experiences and things that maybe they don't get to talk about as much. But from my perspective, there's a lot of great people that are not getting the recognition that they need for like the work that they're doing. They're doing great work and not getting funding, not getting kind of that plus publicity to help get funding and further their work. And these are people that are just constantly cleaning the beaches where they live and creating these pristine areas that are actually then bringing in millions of pounds for the local community and the Scottish government as well. But then there's no funding that's actually going to fund these beach clean efforts, and it's a lot of individuals that are taking on that individual stewardship piece, both because they feel indebted to giving back to the land, whether that's from if they are Indigenous islanders or just have that physical connection. But yeah, I'm not sure if that really answers the question. But I think from my perspective, yeah, the interdisciplinary piece is quite important, and having those diverse voices at the table and actually having them meaningfully engaged, not just there for a platform or there in a token, like to tokenize them, is really, really critical.
Yeah, what comes up for me, I think, is I talk a lot about the young folk that are excited to show up and those that are able to come and walk half a mile with a trash bag and trash grammars and climb over trees and do this physical work. But over those years, the emergence of the feast was really to meet that intergenerational need, because we were hearing from our elders a little grumpiness about not being able, and understandably not being able to come to a cleanup and not be able to paddle. There's just folks that were feeling a little left out. So what has emerged as another critical need in this program is to have space for our elders to tell stories and the things that they remember about growing up. And we are blessed with still having 70s and 80s and some into our 90s. Actually, the oldest Nottoway citizen is like 105 years old. And his secret, he says, is succotash, that southern dish. So just so you know, succotash. But yeah, and so that feast has really been a time for, I tell everybody, just show up. Like, come and get a plate and just show up. And that has really helped to create more of a space for those stories. And then those cleanups, have attracted conservation partners, but it also helped bring in the Virginia Humanities program. And they came and they actually had a drone footage of me paddling, and then I have an audio tour. And thankfully, part of that was also a film crew that got some of our elders by the river and had them tell their stories. And so, yeah, absolutely. I think that we realize that there's so many layers to this work and so much opportunity. And so we're going to keep, we're going to have the kayak paddle piece. And I'm already hearing we need john boats and we need a pontoon boat and all sorts of things. But absolutely, we need to make it accessible, and we have to make it so that every generation is being accounted for and showing up in a meaningful way. Thank you.
Also, if I can build off of that quickly, something that did come up as well in terms of like engaging with citizen science and data sheets more specifically is the language accessibility piece. It's all in English, and there are native Scottish Gaelic speakers, different than Irish Gaelic. But having some sort of way in Scots or Gaelic to have data sheets was kind of requested, and if there were opportunities during beach cleaning sessions or environmental discussions in the community to have more of the Gaelic component, since that it has, I guess, been more of a dying language, but has been kind of resurging over the last couple of years, and a lot of the schools are Gaelic-speaking schools for the children, and so it's a great way to also engage younger generations in interacting with their natural environment, and then also supporting like the language piece as well. But then also understanding that citizen science, a huge proponent of citizen science. Citizen science is amazing, but also it's not accessible for everyone. So a lot of the folks in this community are a bit older, subset of the population, and maybe don't know how to use an app where you can log your data, or there's no internet connection, so you cannot get the exact coordinates and have to use 3 words and things like that. So also being sure to integrate these different experiences and accommodate for those that maybe are picking up trash, but they have very busy lifestyles, taking care of their land as crofters or being, older folks, and trying to bridge the gap so we can still have this concrete data to inform future policies, but meeting people where they're at as well.
No, I was wondering if you could touch on the different communities that are involved in your grant. So like Palau and the cultures that are involved and the different pieces of the folks that have the trap grant. Because I learned a lot at that conference. So. Yeah.
So specifically for Palau, we were grateful that they were able to be a participant. It was a nonprofit called the Abil Society. Cool. They primarily they catch. It's called a mangrove crab, and it's primarily a subsistence style fishery. And it's totally kind of unregulated, I think they said there were 2 commercial fishers on the entire island, and they really just capture the crabs and sell them to local restaurants. So it's very kind of sustainable, but they still run into this ghost fishing issue, even on a smaller kind of subsistence scale. Joyce, the PI, was able to work with the local park rangers to remove a lot of, a good amount of traps, and they actually were able to come to Virginia. We had a big gathering with all of our PIs, which was really great, and they took 6 flights to get to Virginia to talk with us, and they said that they're going to take everything that they learned at the conference and take it to their local governors and make basically recommendations for policy, which is really exciting. And we were super excited that we were able to just kind of be like enablers of that kind of work. And so we see ourselves as sort of customer service for these groups. That was.
Yeah, what I thought was interesting about that is that the derelict gear was impacting, was it the women's fishers being able to go and get the clams? Or was it crabs?
Yeah, I think that, traditionally, I think the women fish for clams.
Clams, that's what it was.
Palau, yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Hello, my name is Tyrese. I'm a Ray Fellow at Ocean Conservancy. I wanted to say thank you to all the panelists for your wonderful presentations. I learned a lot, but my question's for Noah. I wanted to ask, you had mentioned the species that were affected by the derelict traps, and it was very sad to see all the different species that were impacted, especially some endangered species as well. But I wanted to ask if there was any research or data that y'all are taking on the specific impacts on species and any that are particularly affected by these traps, if there are any that are on the higher end of the scale that you're seeing more often, and in that same vein, if there's any initiatives to modify the traps in order to try to mitigate those impacts of those species. Yeah,
that's a great question. So that is part of our standardized data set that we require all of our groups to collect. They record every single animal that's captured in the trap, and it's not a whole picture of what's being captured because it's only a snapshot of what was in the trap when it was pulled up. Like I talked about the self-baiting problem, so these traps will work for years and they'll kill a bunch of animals before they're ever pulled up by anybody. But yeah, the data set that we're collecting we hope that it can inform some of these policy changes. A big example in this region is the diamondback terrapin, which there is a solution for. If you've heard of a bycatch reduction device, it's a little basically panel that you can put on the funnel of the crab trap that prevents terrapins, which for some reason they love crab traps. They really once one goes in, they'll all follow each other in, and then they all swim up and to get air, and they get trapped and die. But these bycatch reduction devices have been proven to keep them out of the traps without impacting the harvest. We just see a lot of pushback when it comes to trying to regulate something like that into commercial fishery because of the cost of that. It funnels down to the fisher, and they have they make the argument that they have enough, overhead already, and I think that's a totally valid argument. So we have to kind of have these dialogues with the fishing communities. I think that a good approach is to kind of regulate these on recreational traps, and so that's something that we're working on in Virginia, and in Delaware too. I think they required in Delaware? Or?
BRDs are required in Delaware,
Great.
just colorings are not.
Virginia's behind the curve on a lot of this stuff.
No, I think at the trap meeting that you all just had at VIMS, we also talked about the option of when they're building these crab traps, why not just put the excluder devices in them during the construction phase? Like, that's not my question, but I just wanted to mention that. My question is actually during beach cleanups. We just did one a few weeks ago, and we found a crab trap and just put it up by the trash cans. When we're out on doing our balloon surveys, it's not uncommon to find these crab pots here and there, and there may or may not be pictures of truckloads of crab traps going to the landfill. So what you're saying is we should leave it alone and report it, or get licensed under your license to be able to dispose of them legally?
Yeah, you should. I can show you that QR code again if you need, but yeah, in order to technically legally remove them, it's an issue with them being private property, even if they are derelict, but the VMRC collection permit allows us to kind of circumvent that. So yeah, I would say yes, definitely remove them, but yeah, if you want to sign up, register that, and then we would ask you to submit data to us about the traps.
Okay.
And it's also, I should point out, only legal to remove them during the closed season from December to March, even if they're very clearly derelict. So that's one of those kind of gaps in policy that we were talking about.
And so otherwise you just leave them on the beach and...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're supposed to, yeah.
So kind of following up on that, Clean Virginia Waterways oversees the International Coastal Cleanup in Virginia. So that's probably something we should share with our site captains and maybe in other states too. Like, if there is a way, these rules, I had no idea. So just kind of throwing that one out there to everybody that maybe we should be sharing this information if there are these types of rules with our site captains for the International Coast and other cleanup events.
Yeah.
The rules vary by state too.
They do, yeah.
So Delaware does not have the same rules as Virginia, which makes it that much more clear, right? So another question.
Yeah, and Noah, we'll make sure we put that QR code and the information you've given me up on Hooba to share with everyone. There you go.
Thanks. I was curious about the cost of a crab pot, and maybe Chloe too. You mentioned there's materials from fish farms that's showing up, and if you said the 10 to 20% loss of crab pot in a season. Like, is there an appetite, I guess, for improving those systems to reduce the loss? Because that's obviously an economic cost, or that's maybe just thought of as like the cost of doing business for these fishermen.
Yeah, so it, again, depends on the state. But yeah, a blue crab trap costs between $50 and $100, I think, per trap. So it is a pretty significant loss, and that's what these watermen tell us is, they don't want to, they're not, leaving them out on purpose a lot of the time because it is a significant cost that they incur. And yeah, we talked about that during our workshop that we just had about ways to reduce trap loss. And one of the big things that comes up is boater education, because I would say that's the main way that we lose traps in Virginia, is that a boater that is not paying attention. I don't know if you've ever boated in some of these areas with heavily, fished crab traps or whatever, but it's kind of a minefield during the summer. They're everywhere. It's really easy to run over one and cut the line with your prop and not even notice. And so, yeah, just making boaters more aware of this is one of the main ways that we hear that trap loss can kind of be prevented. And then, yeah, there are kind of, in some states, like there are, I don't want to say it incentivizes leaving your traps out, but there are cases where if there's a big storm coming, like our guy that works in Louisiana was telling us that you can take an insurance policy out on your gear. and it can be categorized as a catastrophic loss, and then you just get reimbursed, and so it's not really worth the effort to go pull them out before a big storm. So.
I guess in Scotland, so salmon feed farm pipes, now there is a system after several folks have advocated for some sort of reporting system through Salmon Scotland, where you can, give the coordinates and send a photo to Salmon Scotland, and they will supposedly come and retrieve it. That can take several months or over a year to do, so most folks just will claim it if they do have the bandwidth and the materials to be able to remove it. I saw recently someone found like an 80-foot salmon pipe, so that can be, as you can imagine, quite difficult to remove. The other one is those large buoys that are like a bit bigger than one of these tables, and those are very, very common to wash up on people's individual property or be found because they are super light. They're completely filled with styrofoam in the inside, and they break open very easily, so they're not seen by the aquaculture farms as super valuable because they are really cheap and can get new ones really quickly, which is disappointing. So maybe if they were made of another material, some of the participants said they would actually value it a bit more and would come and retrieve it and not want to see it go away. And there was also some discussions of local leaders through a group called Plastic at Bay, which is a really great small-scale nonprofit in the Outer Hebrides, and they would love, and it would take a full systems change, but to start re-implementing a lot of the natural materials that were traditionally used in fishing practices and grow a lot of that on the island, so they're not as dependent on these plastic materials and extractive industries.
So with that, I think we've come to the end of our session. Thank you all for your great presentations and great questions. If you have further questions for these folks, you can find them in the break. Will, take it away.